Okay, so more housekeeping. My last podcast was my Ask Me Anything 3, and I got a big response to that, most of which was focused on my Clinton versus Sanders discussion. Many of you seem determined to misunderstand what I said there. So let me just clarify, though I think I was clear originally. So in declaring that I don't think Sanders should be the Democratic nominee, I'm in the unfortunate position of standing against a tidal wave of youthful enthusiasm for the man. Something like 85% of the Democratic Party under 30 will vote for him. So forgive me if I came off sounding like a clueless old man who was standing between you and an even older and more clueless man. But listen, this is what I believe and believe to be rational. I think it is totally rational to want to avoid at almost any cost a Ted Cruz or Donald Trump presidency. If you don't understand the problems awaiting us behind either of those two doors, I'm not quite sure what to say to you. But if you're tempted to vote for Sanders, presumably you do understand those problems, or at least picture something horrible. Well, I think in the case of Cruz, your fears are well warranted. If you're worried about the wrong president just destroying the world, I think Cruz is someone who really fits rather well into that terrifying silhouette. I believe he actually is a religious maniac. His father is certainly a religious maniac. If he becomes the Republican nominee, I'm certain I'll have to say more about that. You do not want Ted Cruz anywhere near the Oval Office. It is a terrifying prospect. Okay, now Donald Trump is far less scary from my point of view. I don't think he believes half the things he says. I don't think he's nearly as bigoted or as conservative or as dumb as he's pretending to be. But I still think he's abjectly unqualified to be seeking the presidency. And if he were to get it, yes, I would be very worried about all the harm he could do. So, in my view, if you are a Democrat or just a thinking person, at this point, you should want to avoid a Republican victory at almost any cost. And the cost of having to hold your nose and vote for Clinton with all her problems is a small one, in my view. I think a Clinton presidency will be very much like a third term for President Obama. And as disappointing as you may have found that, it's not as disappointing as a Cruz or Trump presidency. Now, the national polls that show Bernie Sanders beating Cruz and Trump, and even beating them better than Clinton does, I think are uninformative. I think they're misinformation, in fact, because we have not seen Sanders pilloried by the Republicans for months on end. I do not think he will weather that well. The Republicans simply have to convince 51% of Americans that he's a communist, right? And to have him have to explain his socialism to the American people, I think will sink him. It'll be like having to explain pedophilia, and worse than explaining atheism. Yes, I could be wrong. And believe me, if Sanders becomes the nominee, I will hope with every cell in my body that I'm wrong. But I think if you want to avoid a truly scary outcome, supporting Clinton makes a lot more sense. And there's no national poll that can be run today that will convince me otherwise. What you need is a time machine. You need a poll run after the Republicans go to work on him for months, right? And I don't know how to get those data. So, once again, apologies to the young and idealistic, but if you do get your way, and it is Bernie Sanders against Godzilla or Dracula, I can assure you I will vote for him and defend him against his critics and go after his opponent, whoever that turns out to be. And November will be very interesting, far too interesting from my point of view.